Census records are one of the many genealogical resources that I utilize to bring you the full accounts of Berks County's architectural history. They help me confirm who lived in any given residence and also provide context into that person's age, familial makeup, and employment. Recently, while browsing some of Reading's 1900 census records, I noticed 2 boxes for the very first time. They are labeled mother of how many children and number of these children living. My initial reaction as a woman was to consider how personal of a question that is, with the intention for it to be eventually public record. However, as a historian living 125 years in the future, I am grateful for the insight, however morbid it may be, into childbearing and navigating childhood mortality at that time. In 1900, there were 165 infant deaths for every 1,000 live births. If you managed to get past infancy, there was a 20% chance you would die before your 5th birthday. There are many factors which contributed to this, including unsanitary conditions, mainly water supply and nutrition. However, easily the most prominent cause of childhood deaths around the turn of the 20th century were infectious diseases. If you consider these overall childhood mortality rate statistics in terms of my daughter's modern K through 4th grade elementary school, with roughly 500 total children enrolled, that means about 100, about 20 students per grade, and 5 students per classroom would have died before they were old enough to start kindergarten. Pneumonia alone would account for about 2 of them per class. Public health advancements into the century helped tremendously, and the introduction of antibiotics and vaccines changed the outlook forever. To further understand motherhood at the time, I crunched the numbers from Reading's 9th Ward in the 1900 census. The 9th Ward was bounded by 7th, Buttonwood, 10th, and Walnut Streets. I chose this section of the city because it seemed to be comprised of pretty much typical working class people. Over the course of the 24 pages included in this ward's census, I found that there were 243 mothers of all ages in the dataset who had given birth to 1,045 children. Out of those birthed, 720 were living at the time of the recording of the census. This means that 31% had died before that point. Not all of them were children at the time, that includes their adult children as well. Additionally, I calculated a sobering reality. Out of the 243 mothers, 122, or 50%, had lost at least one child. In September of 1909, the Tuberculosis Aid Society of Berks County fundraised for the establishment of a sanatorium in which to care and cure victims of the scourge of the nation, the White Plague. Many wealthy and well-known citizens took part in giving. These illnesses didn't discriminate and took the lives of both wealthy and poor families alike. According to a 1909 Reading Times article, 1 in 40 people suffered from TB, with 1 death recorded every 5 minutes at that time. The organization raised $20,000 that day and was donated the former Centennial Springs Hotel on Neversink Mountain. It opened officially as the Neversink Mountain Tuberculosis Sanatorium shortly after New Year of 1910 under the management of Dr. A.N. Rothrock. The hospital operated until the 1930s and was abandoned for quite a few years before being demolished by the county in 1935. Like pneumonia, tuberculosis saw a sharp decrease in cases by 1930, mainly due to advances in treatment and improvement in socioeconomic conditions. Diphtheria was one of the most dreaded childhood diseases in its peak during the mid to late 1800s. 1 out of every 10 children infected would die of the disease by way of suffocation, as a false membrane would build around the child's larynx and block their airway. In the 1880s, Dr. Joseph O'Dwyer discovered that he could manually intubate patients as a way of keeping their larynx from being engulfed by the membrane. Before that, the only method of treatment was a tracheotomy. Keep in mind that both of these treatment methods predated modern anesthesiology. The vaccine for diphtheria was first developed in the 1890s, but it wasn't widely used until the 1920s. Today, it is considered to be virtually eliminated due to generations of widespread vaccination against it. Scrolling through these endless census pages, now I can only see the discrepancies between the numbers. I've heard theories that Victorian-era women were somehow less attached to their children, knowing the reality of childhood mortality rates. Anyone who has ever been a mother knows that this is a ridiculous notion. We are biologically programmed to prioritize the well-being of our children. To lose any, let alone how many some of these women did, must have been excruciating. Only in relatively recent times has childhood been viewed as a whimsical experience that many of us look back on with fondness and comfort. Let us not forget that for the vast majority of human existence, childhood was something we merely survived.